Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. They had the wrong intro there, so I think popped it off right away. That was my Wild Wild West one with the boys talking football. We're in for a treat today, folks. I've got a guest that I think you'll like. Uh, I'll do my introduction and hopefully I'll do him justice because there's a lot here to talk about. He's the son of an Olympic player and co-founder of a world-renowned hockey stick factory, which I miss to this day. Christian Brothers, sticks made by hockey players, for hockey players, was what his father, the old saying they had back in the day. He also was named as a All-State as a sophomore and received the honor again as a junior and senior. By the way, during his senior year at Warroad, after his Warriors were eliminated in the playoffs, he was able to suit up and play with the Lakers as a winger on the same line as his father, where his father centered. That's pretty dang cool, folks. That's a good memory there. This gentleman was recruited by several D1 hockey team programs throughout the country, but he narrowed his decision down to two teams, North Dakota and Minnesota, as his finalist. And he finally chose North Dakota due to, being a bit smaller and closer to home, of course, where he played 2 seasons, tallying 70 points and finishing runner-up in the national championship to that rival team, the Minnesota Gophers, who he didn't which Neil Broughton scored that famous winning goal, which ended up being a teammate on the '80 Olympic team. So after playing for the Sioux, we go on to duplicate his father's feat of winning a gold medal by starring on that U.S. Olympic team. We all know that the 1980 Miracle on Ice in Lake Placid. This gentleman was drafted 40th overall by the Winnipeg Jets in 1979. Played more than 1,000 games in the NHL, mostly with Winnipeg and the Capitals, who we know most for, with over 770 points in the NHL, tallying 770 points. I believe, and Dave can remind me of this or not when we get him on here, is he holds the NHL's fastest goal record by a player in his first game, scoring 7 seconds into his opening shift. After finishing up playing his playing days with the NHL and IHL, he was a coach, I believe, with the USHL, now defunct team, the Fargo Moorhead squad, where he was parts of 3 seasons. And in 2001, he was inducted in the USA Hockey Hall of Fame. He currently resides in Twin Cities and works for Cardinal Glass. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to bring on Dave Christian from Warroad. Dave, I hope I got it all. I mean, there's probably something there I missed, but
No, I thank you for all the embellishment. So that was
there's no
fantastic. So
embellishment there.
I think you covered it. You got it all.
Okay, great. Aside from my little mix-up on my intro there, but that's okay. When my little video, I clicked my wrong button, but we're all good. So, no, it's a pleasure to have you on. I enjoy talking to folks back home and playing hockey up north. And what I kind of want to do to always start out is we talk about where we grew up because it's so important to remember home. I still say, well, where I'm from. I'm from Roseau, and I'm sure you say, well, you don't live there, but you still say, where's home? It's Warroad. So, can we talk a little about growing up in the great town of Warroad and having your dad as a coach and mentors such as Roger and also Gordon and people like Cal playing back home as a youth and moving on to the Warriors.
Yeah, I was certainly an enjoyable and certainly a different time. All you were free to go. You wake up in the morning, go to school, come home from school, go head to the rink, and as long as you're headed home when the siren went off at 10 p.m. And you don't get home much after 10 p.m. You'd be in trouble. But yeah, the freedom to run and go and grab your friends and ride your bike all over and get into all kinds of trouble.
Different times, but boy, you talk about nostalgia. I wish those times. Sometimes I look back and I got to throw up the rink. Of course, we talk about this facility here, the old barn. I mean, there's quite some memories there. If I remember, I've had some great games in that building, and I love that barn. And I'm going to throw up. This isn't your team, but '84 Olympic team because people look at the old barn, which is no longer there. You look how steep it was back there. And I remember Cal, and you can probably attest to it, sitting up there in a fedora and chewing on a cigar, watching the games.
Chewing on a cigar, probably about 3-4 rows down from the top on that end, and taking in. Didn't matter what game it was. Squirts, Pee-wees, Bantams, high school, Warroad Laker games, always in the same spot, entertaining folks and visiting and talking hockey nonstop. But yeah, that brings back some
Who
great
were some of
memories.
your
That
coaches
photo.
growing up, Dave? Who were some of your coaches growing up as a youth? Obviously your dad coached you a little bit, but in squirts and then peewees, and then moving on that band. Who were your coaches that were?
I think Cal was the coach when I first started as a squirt. Cal was coaching the squirts, and then again into the first year of peewees. And my dad, as you said, my dad was my coach, and certainly remember you're always toughest on your kids, right? You're
Oh
and
yeah,
as a coach, as a father, and coaching my kids, I always found that to be true. I was always tougher on them than I was on anybody else, and that was true with my dad as a coach. Um, but yeah, great memories of spending literally from the time school got out, maybe home for dinner, and then back to the rink or back onto the river for to
there you
find
go.
somebody that had shoveled off a rink and skate till dark. Skate and darkness came somewhat early, but do the best you could with sometimes by just moonlight and trying to find the puck when it went. You missed a pass and it went probably half a mile
Yeah.
down
Well,
the
there's
river.
no lack of ice up there now with the way the weather's been, right? The way little chilly back home, so we know we got ice on the old Rosal River and Warroad rivers.
Oh yeah,
So
always,
I gotta. We
always,
talked
always
about your
skated
father.
on the river by Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's pretty early down here. We're lucky. See, I live in southern Minnesota, and we're lucky to get ice. And actually, we do now because we got a cold snap. But it's a big difference living way up north. World's got that thing going with the river up there now. It's kind of like the canal in was it Ottawa, where they got that thing. It's pretty cool where it's gotten bigger and bigger every year. Where now people are able to skate on that, and they made it kind of a a little more of a community thing. It's pretty cool from what I've seen.
You know what? I have not skated. I've seen it. I have not skated on it, but yeah, you can skate for miles, and all along the way, there's a number of rinks uh, shoveled off. You can always find a game going on at some point on that skate.
So when we talk about the youth, you moved on to high school, but I mentioned, before we go into the high school aspect, the impression that your father and Roger and Gordon all left on you. I mean, there's some pretty big shoes. I mean, was there pressure growing up there having them as, you know, father and uncles?
I didn't really see it as any pressure. It was more so just encouragement, and I was allowed to just fall in love with the game of hockey on my own for my own reasons, not because of anybody that had played before, but I just enjoyed being in the arena. In fact, I would during the summer. That Memorial Arena was used to store lumber for Marvin Windows, and uh, in traveling through, riding through town with my grandpa, I'd always make him stop, and we'd have to go in the. I just have to go in the rink, and there was obviously no ice, lots of lumber and wood piled up uh, in the arena. But I always made him stop just to check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah,
And
it's like,
yeah, you're just, for sure. There's so many impressions that town and family, the family aspect, Cal Marvin, the folks in Warroad. It's just like you just experience like you just do what needs to be done. The volunteer effort that was present all the time. If not only just with the arena, but a ball field or theater or anything going on in the town of Warroad was all those folks and witnessing all those people that would show up to do what needed doing after working their respective jobs, and then show up at night and take care of what needed being done.
that's the great thing about us growing up in a small community. It is a community, it's a culture, we got each other's backs, and that's what I really appreciate about having grown up in, a small town back home. So, um,
Absolutely.
I gotta bring this up. I'm gonna throw a picture up here, of course, because when we talk about town of world and hockey town, here's what I remember the most because I love getting these sticks. Is that plant right here, driving into town, you see. Can you talk about that? I mean,
Y-
I'm sure you spent a little time in there as well, having a
Well,
connection there.
that was, yeah, I remember as a teenager working in the plant all summer long. Uh, and then even, once hockey season started, going into the plant and being able to make a dozen sticks for yourself or half a dozen sticks for yourself, and then go to the rink and test them out and find out real quickly if you did something wrong and it didn't feel just right. And go back and do it again. But I can remember, working there and and making sticks and did probably every process except I didn't work in the fiberglass room at all, but sanding sticks and curving sticks, grading shafts and uh, for players, and seeing a lot of players that I looked up to making sticks for them, like with the old Minnesota North Star, Jude Druin. I remember making sticks for Jude Druin. Uh,
That's pretty
all the
cool.
majority of universities at that time, back in um, 70s, 80s, uh, predominantly in the
Yeah, I loved getting
70s
those.
as a,
We
as
used
a
to get
kid
those
growing up.
reams.
You're making
I
sticks, stamping names of people that you looked up to.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I always look over a lot of the names on the sticks, when we'll talk about the Olympics, but when you played in the Olympics, you didn't hurt the sales for the old Christian Brothers hockey sticks either. I think they went up 40 or 50%
No, that
for
was a
that.
good boost.
Good marketing move
that
there.
was a good boost. Actually, I think there was boosts for hockey overall. Like and Christian Brothers Road was in on that as well. Boosted that market and boosted the game of hockey
Oh,
nationwide.
for sure, for sure. No, no, I miss the old saying, "Hockey sticks made by hockey players for hockey players." That's true to this date, yeah, prices were a little bit different back then versus they are now, and that's why I created something myself. I'm doing so. We'll sit sticks. So moving into high school, then when you played high school, obviously
Oh,
you
good
had
for
to.
you. Yeah, we date our.
Yeah, we hit ourselves is right. I don't want to talk about the prices back then versus now. It's crazy, but um, so having going into high school, and obviously back in that day, you
A
had to
couple
go through
dollars. Or
Roseville back
Christian Brothers Tiger, $2.
then.
Well, yeah, you had to
That,
go through
that's
Roosevelt.
unheard of.
Yeah, Aaron and Neil and Butsy. Holy cow! Uh,
And that's what I was going to bring up.
Mike Stone,
Talking
the
about high
Foss
school hockey.
boy.
You that era in that time, had a tough time because of that section. We always joke now when Rosa went to Double A, they didn't went to Double A because they couldn't get through Warroad class, and now it's Rosa and Warroad. It's a little bit different. Warroad's kind of picked up the pace. The main, they got the upper edge on the Rosa High School, in my opinion, now where things have been going. But back then, it was just the opposite. We had the upper hand. And on your team, was it just yourself and I think Conway Marvin, correct? Were the other Division One hockey players that played for War when you were playing? Was
That's
Scott
correct.
Marvin too
Yeah,
on that team, or was
Conway
he a little
Marvin.
older? I forget how old Scott was.
Scott was ahead of us in high school.
Okay, okay.
Uh,
But
so
that
yeah,
squad, and I think,
he was at UND. He
and
was
I
at
know
UND when I was playing high
I'm kind of
school.
going all over the place, but I can't help it. Who's the goalie was for you guys when you played back then? You
Uh,
remember?
uh, yeah, Ferguson. Uh,
Ferguson? Okay. I'm trying to
Bruce
think.
was a
Maybe.
forward. Doug Ferguson.
Okay.
Uh,
I always got to bring up the goalie union. That's just me. I
God.
forget. I
There
can't
you
help
go.
it. But,
Yeah, you got to. I
so
have a goaltender,
up
so yeah,
level,
I'm with that.
there you go.
I'm fostered
And,
into the goalie union.
you
I was
now you're
told
kind of
one time that every family deserves one.
so they know how difficult a position it is to play, right?
Every family deserves one goalie. Yeah.
It's stress. It's more stressful being a parent with the goalie than playing the position, I think. So when
Well,
you
it was for my wife. Very
usually is,
stressful
isn't it?
for my wife having a son as a goalie. And I was like, hey, what's so stressful? You always know where he is on the ice. Like there's nothing,
Yeah,
you know where to find him.
yeah.
And she
Well,
goes,
unfortunately,
well,
we're the
what if
last
he
line of
lets it? Last line of defense,
unfortunately we're
right?
the yes, exactly.
It's always the goalie's fault.
That's the unfortunate thing, but that's what. But you also can be the
Yeah,
star too. So that's why I always
that's
loved it
right.
when I went to the Papa Palace. Oh, Cal would always say, "Super save, how you doing there, Super save?" Super save City used to call me. So
Super
great
save
memories
Sid.
back then.
That's awesome.
Great memories back.
Oh,
So
oh.
the practicing, and you didn't make the state tournament, which is everybody's goal, and I never played it myself, but um, just being able to play with your father on the Lakers and practice with the Lakers in that senior year, what kind of experience was that? Was I mean, to be able to do that, that had to have been pretty cool before you went off to college hockey. Can you talk a little about playing with him?
That was incredible. I think Cal Marvin for saving a card which allowed me to uh, play with the Lakers at the end of that high school year and through the playoffs. I think we played in the not the I don't think it was the Allen Cup that year, uh, but yeah, play through the playoffs and play on the same line as my dad. Best center iceman I've ever had. Right. It was incredible, and it was just kind of the locker room scene where you had a group of guys that took the game seriously, but didn't take themselves and had fun with it, and had real jobs, and took a big commitment for them to play with the Warroad Lakers. I often joke about the fact that so after that Olympic year, I turned pro, and I didn't realize it at the time, but Cal had saved a card just in case after the Olympics were over that I would be able to come back to Warroad and play with the Lakers in the playoffs again. But I
Does that
chose to
feel
sign with the Winnipeg Jets, and looking back as kind of as a joke, I was like, well, maybe I made the wrong choice. Maybe I should have signed that card with the Lakers instead of signing that contract with the Jets.
well, I don't know, 773 points later in 1,000 games? I think it was a pretty good decision.
It
I
worked
always
out all
joke
right.
when I talk about I always joke when I talk about the Lakers, though. You talk about that card. Is that like the player to be named later on the roster, where they always had a position where you never knew who was going to be? They left that number that somebody be wearing. You just never knew who was going to be.
I think it was something like that. They had a certain number of roster spots that they could fill for the year, and Cal always kept a couple in his back pocket that he didn't fill out. So he never, he was always looking for that piece to fill in at the end of the year.
Yeah, he was a smart man, smart GM. I watched quite a few Lakers games over there in the old Papa Palace, and some good teams by far. So moving on from high school, but I do want to pull this up or push this up just so people know. I mean, that's another one of the many awards. When I see this here, Dave, one of the top 100 of all time in Minnesota hockey. That was done by, I think, the Minnesota Hockey Hub some years ago, but you got you ranked number 50. But it doesn't matter if you're 50 or 99 or 100, just to be part of that elite group of all the hockey players that played through Minnesota. Um, I mean, what's that say? What do you think about that? I mean, your thoughts on being part of that elite 100? And there's probably many others that could have been on that list as well, but you're part of the top 100 to ever play the game um, from Minnesota Hockey Hub.
There's no doubt that's very humbling when you think of some of the names that have come through Minnesota hockey. It's pretty incredible. Certainly a long list of excellent, great players to have come through. And I think as a kid growing up, that was always like our goal was to play for the high school team. It wasn't to play for much beyond that. Play for the high school team and maybe have a chance to play with the Lakers. And uh, I'm, I think in growing up in a small town, that was always your objective. Just get a
Yeah,
shot to play for the high school team. So, looking at that and making that list, that's pretty humbling.
that's pretty cool. And congratulations on that. So let's move on to the collegiate level there. Now you had it narrowed down to two schools. I mean, you had a lot of colleges that wanted you, obviously, but you narrowed it down between Minnesota and UND. So you picked UND. I'm sure maybe Cal and some of the local people had a little bit to say in that, but the proximity to Warroad, being smaller town guy, I'm sure that had a lot to say in why you actually went to UND. Is that correct? Or can you kind of fill us in why you chose them and decided to become a Fighting Sioux?
Well, I think that it was a big part of it. I had visited Minnesota and the University of Minnesota, and that was somewhat of a culture shock going from Warroad to the Twin Cities and visiting the U. And, 50,000, 60,000 students at the time, and then at the part in it that North Dakota, Grand Forks, a little closer to home, smaller school. So I made that choice, and
And you didn't have too
worked out
bad
pretty well.
couple. You didn't. Yeah, you didn't have
Saying
a
no
bad
to
couple
Herb
of
Brooks,
years or
though.
70. Yeah, how was that? I mean, to say no
The
to him.
first year was a certain. Yeah, that's funny because I turned down Herb Brooks that year, 77, went to the U, and then went through that tryout for the Olympic team in 79 with Brooks as coach, and the fact that I went to North Dakota didn't ever come up, which was pretty interesting. Great lesson, I think, as an adult, as a leader, and as a business person, as a coach. Certainly a great lesson. Like you got to exhale the past sometimes, inhale the future,
Yep.
and he looked past that certainly with that '80 Olympic team.
Well, the Olympic team, and then I wanted to talk about that championship game where you guys ended up facing the University of Minnesota, and I think that's the one. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's the one where we saw Neil sliding, and then he chipped over Bob Irabuchi. Is that the famous goal that he scored in that championship game to win it?
Oh yes, I remember that. I definitely remember that. I think we were where were we? The old Olympia in Detroit for that NCAA championship, and I remember that. So, yeah, that childhood rivalry all through continued even with the Gophers. And the great part about it was Neil and I are good friends, close friends. We became roommates with the Olympic team, and so that rivalry got set aside real quick. And
Yeah, I
Neil,
was going to say,
phenomenal
then you moved
player.
on. You, you guys ended up moving on to play together in the Olympic team. So that UND team, those UND teams, there was a pretty good connection in that northwestern part of the state. If I remember right, looking at the rosters, Dave, what do I see here? I see yourself, Conway was there. Then you had Mike Burgraff and Mike Stone, I think, was there too, as well. Maybe Frankie Burgraff too. So there was five
Mike
guys from
Stone,
Northwestern.
Frankie. Yeah, Frankie was there. Frankie was my roommate second year at North Dakota.
Okay. So
If you
there's a
know
little bit
Frank,
of
that was a lot of interesting trouble we got into as roommates
yeah,
at
well,
UND.
those are stories we probably can put off air. Maybe I'm sure you want to talk about, but any off air. Oh, and by the way,
No,
you
there's a
got
good one. We were playing we were playing at
let's hear it.
we're playing at Michigan Tech. Frank and I are roommates, and after the pregame skate, we have a meal. We go to our room, and as in that Upper Peninsula is out like tons of snow, right? So Frank and I decided that hey, we're going to make use of all that snow sitting on the windowsill of our hotel room. I don't know, 7, 8 stories up, and so we started making snowballs and throwing them at the cars as they're going by, below us on the street. And we didn't realize at the time, didn't notice, but Gino Gasparini, our coach, was in the coffee shop right across the street. So when we got to the game, he was like, "Hey, how's the pregame nap preparation?" I'm like, "Oh, good." He goes, "Throw any snowballs in the afternoon?" We're like,
How's your
"What?
arm? You want to play some spring
Maybe,
baseball or
maybe." Yeah, he was.
busted? Yeah, that's funny because back then, you didn't have any cell phones or anything like that to worry about. Whereas back then, it's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody know, nobody recorded it. Nobody
No,
saw me. So
You
Good
had
stuff.
exactly. You had to actually be present in order to.
To be caught. So, yeah, well, good old days. But no, that you had some pretty good teammates, and that's I had to throw up in the northwestern part. Those teammates being from up that way, and I remember Bob Bawaguchi. I actually went to watch the Olympic game when you guys played the Sioux. I played. I think excuse me. I part checked it. I checked that. That's something else. When I remember watching that, it was a Pee Wee. I won selling candy, so I was able to go watch the Sioux, and that was when Bob Bawaguchi was the goalie. But I also got to see you guys play when you played the Flames when you were on the Olympic team. Played the pregame there when you played the
Oh,
Flames
at
at UND, I
UND,
think it
yeah,
was. Yep. So I'm a little bit ahead of
yeah.
myself here on my chart here, but that's me. 20 pucks to my head. I hit, I
We
kind
didn't
of get
do
all
that
over the
was
place.
yeah, that was early. That was early in that schedule, and yeah, we didn't do real well against the Flames that game at UND.
Yeah, if I remember looking at that, Dave, I think it was a 6-1 game or something like that. Back, yeah, it was back. So let's jump into that. Let's jump into that. Obviously it'd be the 10,000 pound gorilla in the room if I don't talk about that because that's before the NHL career. You go to the Olympics, you're in that tryout and that, and we just talked about Herb a little bit, trying out with him that. What was that whole process getting, you had pre-season games and everything, and then going down to the wire? I mean, working with all those teammates of yours and then playing for Herb. I mean, how was that? I'm not going to beat it too much because obviously I'm sure you've talked about 1,000 times the 80 Olympic team, but just let's talk some brief experiences with that whole 80 Olympic team and winning the gold. What were the highs and
Well,
lows
I
that you
think
could talk about during that?
the I don't know that there were many lows, except for the fact like it was such a great experience. It was such a great group of guys to go through it with, and we really did become a close knit family team. And the lows were when somebody got cut and had to leave in that process. And certainly, those guys at the end, the guys towards the end, the last players that were cut. We all knew that we all were aware that it was coming. We certainly didn't want to be that last person going through it. It was a lot of time spent together, but just a phenomenal group of men to be part of. I think that's the one thing that stands out. It was hard, it was tough, but I think Brooks, his greatest challenge for each of us as individuals was just be better than you are today, and that was the whole thing. And I remember some of the mantras that he had, like the legs feed the wolf, gentlemen, the legs feed the wolf.
Yep.
Followed by, if I told you we'd be the best team when we got to Lake Placid, I'd be lying to you. But I can guarantee you this: we will be the best conditioned team when we get to Lake Placid. And that was something that you could grasp. Okay, it's going to be tough, but it's going to be well worth it. I want to this team, and I want to see it through. And it was a big part. That was probably one of the keys to the success that we had was the fact that we were in phenomenal condition.
It sounds like Herb to me, one of the best coaches in ever. Kind of reminds me a little bit what one of my coaches as a youth was Dickie Johnson. Kind of hard nosed. But he's,
Right.
one thing he says, we may be out talented, but we're never going to be outworked. We're going to be the best team in shape. And I remember skating and as a goalie, it sucked because I had the condition, but can't probably the style that the Herb Brooks style, he was kind of a mind guy, but also a stern guy. Do you think that would work today? Just the way times have changed, Dave, the way he's coaching has been, I don't know about saying getting softer per se, but just a little bit different, in terms of how coaching is today.
Well, I think he was smart enough. He would have adapted his coaching style to what was needed. He coached the 2002 Olympic team within an overtime of winning another gold medal. So you don't take two Olympic teams to the Olympics, come away with medals, and that doesn't happen by accident. So he
That
would
to
have
me is a genius.
adjusted and fit in.
Let me throw up that picture. And I think you said that this team here, I don't know if you said that was an earlier picture or later picture, but you got the boys right there. And I don't know where you are in this. I got my open up, but
Yep.
that's the
I'm in
classic picture
the
there with
back
the team.
row. I'm in the back row between Mike Ramsey and Ralphie Cox. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in from the right in the back row. And I look
Oh, there you
over
are.
on the other side and see Les Auger, Dave Delich, Jack Hughes, Ralph Cox. Who else is in there? Third goalie, Bruce Horsch.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah,
That's
so
classic.
we're
And
down.
then
We're
we'll just do
at
the
like
individual then.
25 guys in that, 26.
Then we'll just do the individual one so people can see it there. There's the
That's
guy
pretty
there. There
cool.
he is right there.
Oh, there we
So
go.
there's the so I do have a question aside from USA hockey, the Olympics and stuff, but I noticed you were 13 and I know 13 is kind of a famous number over there in Ward. Seems like, I remember Izzy Marvin, that was his number. David wanted to always wear 13. And what's the story behind 13 Dave? Is there something behind that you
What?
could tell us? Oh, just enough.
My dad wore it for years playing with the Lakers with 13. Uh, I was a fan of Boris Mikhailov with the Soviet team wore number 13. And I think it was admiring the way that they played and being able to see them wear number 13. That's probably the biggest reason. I wore 23 with the Olympic team because Herbie wouldn't allow a 13 on any of his teams. So 23 was available, so I went with 23.
Still had the three in there. You had to get that three in there, right? Part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
No, I was just curious.
Yeah.
So yeah. A lot of these guys, they're still. I mean, we lost Pavlich. He's gone, but you guys get together every now and then. And I mean, do you keep in touch with the guys? Obviously, you mentioned Neil, but do you keep in touch with the guys at all? Still, I mean, is there
Yeah,
time?
yes. Yeah, there's no doubt. We're frequently in touch with one another. We get together usually on a yearly basis. Sometimes, some years more than once, but there's always been a group. We haven't, we were never able to get the whole group together. Even that trip to Salt Lake City to light the cauldron at the opening ceremonies of the Salt Lake City Olympics back in 2002. We had everybody there, with the exception at that point, Mike Ramsey wasn't able to get. He was coaching with the Wild, and he wasn't able to get a flight in time. But yeah, it's as I said, it's a pretty special group. We still have fun. We get back together, and we're reminded of stories, and we give each other crap, and like, doesn't matter how
So does
many
it ever get
years
old
it's
though?
been since we've seen one another.
It never gets old, then, Dave. Does I mean
It
that's
just
something that you'll always have with you.
I don't. I doesn't. It does not get old, and I think it's just the feeling it gave to the whole country at that time. Like, there's a Maya Angelou quote, and that probably hits it. It's people forget what you said, people will forget what you've done, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's the biggest takeaway for us as a team, is the sense of pride and the feeling that it gave the whole country. To which, right after, and people would talk about it and refer to it as, it was always, we beat the Russians, and I'm specifically that Soviet game. It's like, we beat the Russian. It wasn't the U.S. Olympic team beat the Russians. It
It was
wasn't.
the country,
You they beat the
country as a whole. Yeah, the country as
Russians.
a whole. And there was some
It
trying
was
times. I mean, I
we.
was young. That was trying times, with Iran going on in Afghanistan with the Russians and everything. And yeah, it was pretty some trying times. So it just definitely was the whole United States. We, did you mention that term, we? And I remember it as a kid. I think when you guys
Yeah.
won, we were going to a Pee Wee tournament. I think if I remember right, and we heard when you won, and that was pretty amazing. So a lot of good memories. A lot of good memories. So,
Go back to Herb Brooks and the coach and impressing on us that the name on the front is more important than the name on the back. And the whole
that's very true. I mean, that's
you
some
know
things that I think a lot of guys today don't realize that playing the game. You're playing for your team, not. But there's a lot of eyes still, a lot of eyes.
you know
So,
and there
I mean,
are a lot of eyes
I could,
from the team, but I think also interesting that Brooks. I think Brooks recognized the fact that your team it's made up of a bunch of unique individuals, and
yeah.
his job was to put the right people together.
And he did. He did. I mean, it showed. So it's pretty amazing. So to this day, it's still talked about, and it'll be talked about when I'm gone and you're gone, and people still bring it up. It's be part of history. So, but we could beat that until the ground. I mean, we could continue talking about it and talking about it, talking about it. But I want to move on. But there's other things in my mind about the Olympics I'd like to talk about. But let's jump into the NHL. I mean, having from that point we talked about, you could have signed that card with Cal and became a Laker, but you ended up signing with the Jets, and you had 4 pretty good years there. I mean, your first shift, Dave. I mean, your first shift. Is that true that still to this day, is that the fastest goal? Is
I
that the
believe it
fastest?
is.
7 seconds.
I believe it
That's
is the
something. That's
fastest goal to start a career. It was and I remember it more. I was playing on a line with Chris Maneri, who went to Michigan. Morris Lukowich was the other winger. And it was an offensive zone faceoff, second shift of the game. Offensive zone. We were playing against the Blackhawks. We won the draw, and I went to the front of the net. Went back to our defenseman who slid across the blue line, took a shot, and the rebound popped out right on my stick. And I flipped it in the net. And it was like, oh my gosh, having gone the 7 games at the Olympics without scoring a goal, it was like, all right, this is pretty cool.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. No doubt.
uh,
You were more
I
of an
joke
assist machine on the
that
Olympic team, right? You were more of an assist
you
machine.
know it got easier after that. So,
Who was the goalie that you beat in that game? Who was playing for that? Who was the goalie back then? You remember the goalie that you scored on?
Chicago Blackhawk. Tony was. I don't think Tony played that game. Uh,
Okay.
I think Mike Vesser.
Oh,
I
okay.
think was in
Okay.
net for the Blackhawks that game.
I always remember it first, so that's why I was wondering who it would have been. But that would have been pretty cool scoring Tony O, another Hall of Famer. That would have been kind of cool to say. I scored my first goal
But,
ever on Tony Esposito,
yeah,
Hall of Famer. So pretty cool.
on Tony
So
Esposito.
so those years at Winnipeg, I don't want to go into the details exactly, but there was some kind of ups and downs there. You had some good years, but you got traded. What can you talk? What on earth happened? I mean, Liberty, do you want to talk about what happened there?
Uh,
Because I thought, geez, you've been a Jet forever.
Downs said Winnipeg. We won 9 games. So I went from Olympic gold, the penthouse, to winning 8 games in a 80 game schedule. That's the outhouse, penthouse to outhouse.
Yeah, yeah.
But the second year there, I think we still have the greatest point turnaround in NHL history. Part of guys like Dave Babish, Dale Howardchuk arrived in Winnipeg, Thomas Steen, and we turned it around after that dismal first year and qualified for the playoffs the second year I was there.
Yeah, pretty amazing going from 18 points to 71 to
We're
76 now.
30 some points better, maybe 40 points
Uh, it's
better.
pretty amazing turnaround for sure. So, and then after that, with the fourth season, you traded in the middle of the season. What happened there, Dave? Why did you end up in the being captain? I mean, obviously it was good for you because you got to play with the likes like Mike Gartner and some of those guys, or Ben Gustafson, if I recall, on that team, and some of those guys. You had some
Ben
really good
Gustafson
seasons,
in
but
Washington. Yeah. Yep. again, it ran up against the New York Islanders or Philadelphia Flyers in the playoffs. Rangers had some great, great regular seasons. I think we first overall regular season 1 or 2 years, and we were out first or second round of the playoffs. The playoffs, a whole
Just couldn't
different
quite
animal.
just yeah, just couldn't quite get over the hump. But then you ended up going to Boston, and
Couldn't quite get over the hump.
when you moved to Boston, when you moved over to Boston, didn't you get a chance to play in the Stanley Cup Finals? So didn't Boston make it to the finals, or were they close to it?
We did. 1990, we made the finals. Played against Edmonton. That was a year after Gretzky went to L.A. They still had everybody, with the exception of Gretzky and Fuhrer. And we lost all 3 games in Boston that year. Ended up losing that Stanley Cup final to Edmonton.
That's kind of tough. They were a juggernaut. They were a juggernaut back then, like you said. Even after they got rid of Wayne.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were.
I never thought they didn't think they could do it, but then I guess they proved the public wrong. But just
Well, I
a
think they
chance
had
to be able to play.
Yeah, they had the experience. They had the experience of having
But
done
having
it
had just the experience that you
and been
yourself to be able
through
to
it.
experience, what was it like playing in the Stanley Cup Finals? Even though you didn't win it, but just that you won a gold medal for Pete's sakes. But you lost the national championship, then you won a gold medal, then you get to the cup finally. That's everybody in the NHL wants to get to that point, and then it's like, oh no, am I ever going to get there again? I mean, that has been pretty tough still as a player. What was your experience?
Yeah, it was, and you look back and you go, man, what could have been different? What could we have done differently in order to change that result? But getting there, it's a long grind. I certainly feel like, I think about the fact I never played in the Minnesota State high school tournament. As you said, it was always the road always went through Roseau for us. Not, I don't know that we ever played the Rams in the section final. I think we got bumped by East Grand Forks one year. We got upset by Fergus Falls my
Yep.
senior year, and maybe I think Bemidji knocked us out. So we never came up against the Rams, but yeah, I missed out on the Minnesota State high school tournament, as you said. Missed out. I didn't win NCAA, so I left. Played the year in '80 with the Olympic team, and my teammates at UND, they won the NCAA in '80. So I think they got rid of the right person.
I
which
would
was
say
me.
that.
So.
I did have that interview with Phil Sykes, and Phil talked about his championship he played
Yeah.
over there.
I was at that, so that's funny. I was we finished the Olympics. I turned pro with Winnipeg, and we were playing in Boston when the Sioux were at Providence in the NCAA finals. So I rented a car and went over, and I was there for the final games. When Phil had, how many did he have? 4. 4 goals in that championship game.
Yeah, Phil had it's quite the tournament, all tournament team. So he had a pretty good little career in the NHL as well. So yeah, I know we're kind of winding down on time. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I do want to finish up on a few more things. You wind down after Boston. You played St. Louis, and not a bad 44 points with St. Louis there, and then they ended up with the Blackhawks, and you start playing. They sent you down the eye, and then I guess the writing was on the wall after that, and you finished up with the Moose. So I was actually working with the Moose, Dave, doing some season tickets and things. So I was able to experience that. That when they brought hockey back to Minnesota, you were a part of that, and you had a pretty darn good year. 80 points playing in that first year, 94, 95, then 46 the
Well,
final year,
I
second year.
Yeah, that was an enjoyable 2 years. I was finished playing with Dave Snuggerud was with the Moose at that time. Dave Hackstall with the Moose then. So it was an enjoyable time. Some great, we traveled to Atlanta, Houston, Denver, San Diego, L.A., San Francisco, Salt Lake City. That was a pretty good league, and some really good players in that league. A lot of offense,
Well,
a
I
lot of
think was it that year or the next year? Yes, it was that year. I'm looking at the team, Larry Olam too. You got to play with fellow Warroad warrior Larry Olam.
yeah.
So that's kind of
Larry
cool to play
Olam
with a
was on that. Yes, it
yes,
was. Yeah, Larry Legend.
Larry Legend. Two Warroad players, but that was it was fun watching those games. That was coached by I think was it Anton was assistant, and of course Frank Serratori was now the head coach at the Air Force. Pretty intense guy, Frankie. Was he like that coaching when you were
Oh
playing for him, or
my.
was he just
Oh yeah, yeah. We were concerned he would have a heart attack on the bench sometimes. Some games. Oh my gosh.
I think I
Yeah.
think that's the Italian combination and the goaltending combination because he's a pretty fierce guy. I remember him coaching when he coached the Mustangs in Rochester. So I know he was pretty
Yeah,
intense. But,
he was intense. But oh my gosh, the greatest stories ever in hockey. Frank Serratori. He's got the absolute
so
best stories.
do you have a story about that playing in the minor? I mean, obviously, you talk about the minors in NHL, but there's still that's the thing about that I like to call it the camaraderie, the room. That's what I miss the most, and you probably miss the most, just being in the room with the guys. I mean,
Absolutely.
are there any stories that you
That's to this day. There's I don't know. There's to this day that I miss the locker room and just being with a group of guys chasing the same dream, the camaraderie, all of that. There's just something to be said about that. I have a lot of admiration. There's guys that spend, years and years and years playing in the minors, and like I felt fortunate because that international league at that time, it was not a bus league. Uh, we considered in the minors, but we were flying everywhere. Some of the guys that are playing some of the American League teams and the East Coast League teams that are jumping on a bus and bussing around and playing careers, doing that, playing years. That's a lot of admiration for what they go through and the commitment that they make to play the game of hockey.
Well, it's definitely for the love of the game there because they're not doing it for the money. That's for sure. The guys playing in those lower levels, they definitely are still chasing that dream, but they love the game. It's like playing back in the old days, playing minor hockey up north, playing for the Lakers or the Leafs or whatever. Those guys aren't getting paid. They're banging their bodies up, but they're playing because they love the game and the camaraderie of it. That's the thing about hockey that I think that makes it special. Where you get those teammates and memories, they'll stick with you forever. So Dave, I know I could keep talking on with you here. I know we wanted to keep it. I'm going a little bit over here, but I always like to add this or ask this to people I talk to. I mean, if I was a young guy that came up to you and just said, "Mr. Christian, what advice would you give to a young hockey player or just a young athlete in general?" If you said growing up, I mean, just in general, if there was just what one couple pieces of advice that you would give to a young player right now wanting to play the game?
Uh, have as much fun as you can with it, and just grab every opportunity you have to get on the ice, and just go for it.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, fun. It also helps if you're winning, but have fun. Have fun. So, any final thoughts here, Dave? Because I mean, there's a lot of different things I want to talk about. I'm sure I missed, several in my head, and I know my connection looks like your connection up times are kind of buffering a little bit. But so, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to bring up? I mean, I know you're working with was it Cardinal Glass now, um, living in the cities, but are you involved with hockey any shape or form right now, or pretty much out of it?
I'm pretty much separated from the game. My kids now are in it. I have a daughter that coaches at Stonehill uh, College on the East Coast in the Boston area.
Okay,
She's an assistant with their women's program,
awesome.
and so I kind of stay connected with that. My son's involved with the grandson, who's 6 years old, and they're starting the process all over again. So, my involvement with the game now is getting on the ice whenever I can skating with the grandkids.
There you go. There you go. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down with me and just talking a little bit, just chatting to me. Like I say, it's pretty much off the cuff, no rhyme or reason how we go about it. And just talking a little bit about our time back home, back up north, in the rules of Warroad, just the 218 area. It's a little bit different than people down in the cities or down south. But no, I can't thank you enough for doing this because it's been a pleasure of mine just to talk. Because you're a legend when it comes to hockey in Minnesota, and I mean that you're a pretty humble guy. But the Christian name, is very
No,
well known in the world of hockey.
I'm just I'm still the kid next door, Sid. But thanks for reaching out. This is a pleasure. If you want to do it
No, I
again,
appreciate. I'll put it up on
come up with
this. Will put up on the Facebook, and
anything else.
I got the you.
Hey,
No, I'll put this on the Facebook for the people back home, and then they share with their friends and so on. And then I got a YouTube thing. But again, I pray. I thank you so much. It's a way for me to stay close to the game still. Finally, go Sioux. They're always going to be to me and you, and they're always going to be the Sioux, even
oh,
though they forever
greatest
Sioux,
logo ever, Sid.
forever Sioux.
Yeah, yeah.
You bet. So. All right. Well, this has been Sid Thompson. My guest was Dave Christian, and thanks everybody for watching. So have a good day.